Hi there. Today I'm going to cover a big topic. This one is how do we form congestion and stones in the liver and gallbladder? Some obvious reasons, maybe, and some less obvious reasons and causes that are important and that you will want to know about. This is a big one. I cannot promise to know or talk about every cause of stone formation. We still have a lot of research to do in this field. So our understandings are limited, and of course, mine is just an understanding from the research that I have done and the mechanisms that I can understand at this point. So I'm going to provide you with the information that I have a handle on at this time, and it is not an exhaustive list. Much of the information that I'm going to cover today comes from Andreas Moritz's work, especially the book, The Amazing Liver and Gallbladder Flush, as well as I'm adding some updates and additions based on continued experience as the years have gone on since his passing and since his writing, and as our understanding as a Flushing community has evolved over time. If you appreciate in-depth information on liver health and natural methods for recovering our health, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Songbird in Service. I'm Sienna Songbird. I'm a chronic illness survivor, and I'm passionate about empowering people to recover their own health by addressing root causes of illness within the body from the comfort of our own home. So let's get into it. Why do we end up with congested livers and gallbladders that are full of sometimes tens of thousands of soft and hard stones? Well, the composition of bile is a sensitive situation, and anything that affects the solubility of those constituents will start to cause gallstone formation. So abnormal composition of bile can occur in a number of ways. Cholesterol is normally kept in liquid form through the dissolving action of the bile salts. And of course, the availability of sufficient amounts of water. So, an increase in the amount of cholesterol in the bile can overwhelm the dissolving capacity of the bile salts, which would then promote formation of cholesterol stones. Similarly, a decrease in the amount of bile salts also leads to cholesterol stone formation. And insufficient water intake or lack of availability of water decreases the fluidity of the bile. Then the cholesterol can't be dissolved properly. Instead, it will reconstitute into small clumps, forming small cholesterol pebbles, which in time gradually grow into larger ones. Then there's also pigment stones, which form when the bile pigment bilirubin, which is a waste product of the breakdown of red blood cells, increases in the bile. People with excessive amounts of cholesterol stones are at risk for developing liver cirrhosis, sickle cell disease, and other blood disorders, which then produce higher concentrations of bilirubin pigment, and hence those other bilirubin stones can be formed in the gallbladder and the liver. So whenever the composition of the bile in the liver is not balanced, small cholesterol crystals begin to combine with other bile components to form tiny clots. These tiny clots obstruct the little bile canaliculi, little canals, which slows bile flow further. More bile is added to the tiny clots. Eventually, those little clots become big enough to block larger ducts and eventually be called stones. And some of these grown, getting larger stones may pass into the larger bile ducts, cluster together with other stones, or grow into larger sizes by themselves. And the result of these bigger stones and clusters of stones is that the bile flow becomes increasingly obstructed in the large bile ducts as well. And it leads to a vicious cycle. Eventually, the largest hepatic ducts begin to clog up, which drastically reduces the amount of bile available for the digestive process. And again, it's a vicious cycle. Sluggish bile flow also alters the composition of the bile. affecting the gallbladder. In the gallbladder, a small clot of bile may actually take up to 8 years to grow large enough to be noticeable and become a serious health threat. So by the time people have gallstones in the gallbladder that are large enough to be detected, they have likely been growing in there for a long time. And subsequently, likely there are a lot of stones in the liver that were even there before getting to the gallbladder. At the time of Andreas's work, it was known that 1 in 10 Americans had gallstones in the gallbladder. So again, this is a more advanced condition. There probably were already stones in the liver. And it was estimated that about 95% of adults in industrialized nations have stones in the biliary system of their liver. And these kind of stones in the liver cause a lot more diseases than gallstones in the gallbladder. So in order to really turn around our situation of chronic illness, we need to understand how to prevent and clear stones from the liver. Okay, let's talk about some specific causes. And you guys, stay with me if you can. This is, like I mentioned, going to be kind of an extended one. But I wanted to just get you all the information that I have. So one of the main well-known causes and largest contributions to stone formation in the liver and gallbladder is overeating and dysfunctional eating. So let's get into some details about this. If you regularly eat too much food or more frequently than the body needs or can handle, the digestive juices, including bile, they become depleted. And this leaves large proportions of the ingested food undigested, which then becomes a constant source of harmful microbial activity in the intestines. It kind of sits and ferments and rots, which adds toxic substances that begin to impair and overwhelm the liver, the lymphatic system, starting to thicken the blood. So the blood becomes imbalanced and the lymph becomes imbalanced by overeating, which leads to decreased blood flow in the liver lobules, which alters the bile composition and starts to generate gallstones. The gallstones in the liver, of course, further congest the blood and the lymph, which starts to impact the body's basic metabolism and again becomes a vicious cycle. And also the more one overeats, the fewer nutrients actually become available to the cells of the body because of this like low digestive effectiveness. So constant overeating actually leads to cell starvation. And you can see this in a constant desire to snack or having food cravings. That is a sign of progressive malnutrition and metabolic imbalance. So how do we know how much is too much to eat? Well, eating to the point that you feel completely full or you can't eat any more food is a clear sign that the stomach has reached the point of dysfunction. Digestive juices need some space in the stomach to be able to mix with the ingested food. So it's recommended to eat and leave at least 1/4 of the stomach empty. Another aspect is the timing of when we eat. So according to Ayurveda, the digestive power is strongest at the middle of the day when it's the height of the yang time. The sun is high in the sky and there's the height of the fire, which, could equate to that power of the digestive fire. So this is said to be a time when the digestive components, the juices are higher and more available, and they are the things that help to break down foods into the components that help us receive the nutrition. So it is suggested in some traditional modalities to really eat the largest meal towards the middle of the day. And in contrast to that, digestive powers are generally considered lower in the morning and evening hours. So if we do not consume a big meal in the middle of the day, then we might not be getting as much nutrients as we need. Another issue is snacking. So the gallbladder, when you have a small snack, the gallbladder releases a little bile. However, that's not sufficient to completely empty the gallbladder, which then the bile in there starts to become more and more concentrated if it hasn't been released. And so that increases the risk of gallstone formation. Likewise, and kind of similarly, eating too soon after the last big meal, the stomach is forced to leave the previous eaten meal sort of half digested and attend to newly ingested food instead. And so the older food kind of gets pushed forward, but it begins to ferment and putrefy, again, becoming a source of toxins in the digestive tract. And the new food in the stomach does not receive adequate amounts of digestive juices, leaving it also half digested. And undigested foods are always a source of congestion, first in the intestinal tract, and then those toxins getting circulated into the blood and the lymph. Another issue with eating would be eating too late in the day, and this is common with our sort of dinner time, supper time habits. Um, the digestive power is just a lot reduced in the afternoon and evening, especially after 6. So again, you end up with this like waste products that are sitting in the intestines, and also distract the liver and gallbladder from doing their sort of other tasks of cleanup that happen during the nighttime. So ideally, there should be at least 3 hours between the last meal and going to bed. Some people find that they can, if they have a good sized meal with what they need when their digestive power is higher in the middle of the day, that they actually get everything they need for most of the day. Carbs, simple carbs, refined sugars, can cause stone formation. And one of Andreas Moritz postulates that the increased consumption of sugar among children may explain why such a high percentage of younger people today have already accumulated a lot of gallstones in the liver. Now, of course, we're going to get to also that the toxicity factor and the inherited toxins from the generations previously, I believe, is a huge reason why people are sicker younger and younger, including children and even babies that already have really compromised livers that are full of congestion and cholesterol stones, fatty livers, basically, even as already as children. Andreas Moritz talks a lot about the overconsumption of protein being a problem, and he's a real proponent of vegetarian diets, which if you read his books, you may be convinced of by him. And a lot of us more experienced liver flushers did sort of try to follow his dietary recommendations. I was also specifically vegetarian, vegan, and low fat for a long time, really high plant-based, some popular dietary protocols. I followed that for a long time. I actually found that I had a harder time with liver flushing and that my liver in general was becoming more dysfunctional, especially with the lower fat diets. And we're going to get more specifically into that. But sometimes protein is really touted as, the best thing, especially as our country was really trying to promote a low fat diet. It was a much more higher protein, and sometimes it's mostly when that balance between fat and protein is off, when it's skewed way higher to the protein. And especially if we are ingesting a lot of difficult to digest, highly cooked meats, and especially if we don't have the digestive juices to really break those down, it can become a problem. So really low fat diets there was a big promotion of that, at least in the West, and obviously that has shifted some, but we're coming out of that era basically. And that can might have a big part to do with, a big responsibility to this huge increase of liver and gallbladder disease that we see among the Western population. So, in general, you need 10 grams, which is 1/3 of an ounce, um, of fat in a meal or snack. That's what's necessary for the gallbladder to contract fully and normally. Um, So a lot of times too, as the digestion begins to be compromised, the gallbladder and liver are compromised, someone is advised to cut down on fats because they're experiencing problems with it. However, this further prevents the gallbladder from naturally and completely emptying its bile contents, which leads to more problems with fat digestion, stones starting to form, that concentrated bile in the gallbladder. Um, and eventually the body will run out of useful essential fats and fat soluble vitamins, which prompts the liver to increase cholesterol production, which causes even more stones to be formed. And so the less fat the body receives from the food, the worse the situation becomes. But since the body is having a hard time digesting fats properly, it enters this sort of vicious cycle, which Andreas Moritz says can, in most cases, only really be turned around by removing all the stones from the liver and the gallbladder and gradually increasing fat intake to normal levels. I did find for myself that when I was on a low fat long-term diet, and especially like working into some fasting, I found that my liver was working less and less well and wouldn't respond well to a lot of liver cleaning things, even though some of the protocols I was on talked about helping the liver, but without that exercise of the bile ejection, things get really stagnant in there. So then they get thicker and sludgier, and I really didn't find that helpful. Um, so in general, if you are working to heal the liver, it's important to carefully continue to consume fats and improve your ability to digest and receive fats. So as one example, we also have this like horrible situation with skim milk, which luckily is also becoming less popular probably, but up in the way that milk, is in its natural state, full fat milk contains the right amount of fats that would be required to create the situation in the body for full proper digestion of the milk proteins. And without that fat in the milk, the gallbladder is not stimulated to release the right amount of bile that would be required to digest the milk proteins and the milk fats. And hence those proteins and fats are left undigested, which would cause, them to putrefy, turn rancid, and also then the body is going to react to those proteins that shouldn't be there in that place. They should have been broken down, leading to, allergic reactions and severe lymphatic congestion. This is seen a lot in formula-fed babies, and it's a contribution to babies suffering from colic. And low-fat milks might be a pretty big part of formation of gallstones in the liver of very young children. Just on the level of foods, GMOs and sort of strange food-like products that are available in our current age, including seed oils, cause stone formation, as well as especially foods that contain artificial sweeteners such as aspartame, I forget how you say that, and saccharin, and other artificial sweeteners really upset the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. And we also have preservatives, which it seems really obvious that could present a problem for the liver and sort of Some of these things that are kind of forever chemicals, but we're eating in our foods, they contribute to that buildup of toxicity, stagnation, and congestion in the liver. Food colorings would also be in this category. Um, the next category is talking about refined salt. So, um, the refined salt, which is sodium chloride and does not have all the other minerals that like a really good sea salt has, um, they make it try to resist absorption of moisture, be more convenient for sales. And so salt manufacturers often add chemicals as desiccants, different kinds of bleaches to the final salt. And after undergoing processing, the sodium chloride can no longer blend or combine with human body fluids, which undermines the most basic chemical and metabolic processes in the body, leading to water retention, kidney and blood pressure problems, and in general, really severe dehydration. So dehydration is another really important aspect of formation of congestion and stones in the liver and gallbladder. So let's look at a few different ways to contribute to dehydration. One would be just generalized lack of water intake, or, you know, just not enough water and not enough clean water. Um, Consumption of beverages that have diuretic effects, which means that they cause you to, sorry, pee excessively out your liquids. So some of these are like different tea, colas, a soda, alcohol, coffee, wines, stuff like that. Stimulating foods can be dehydrating. So spicy foods, hot spices, chocolate, sugar, tobacco. Stress can be dehydrating. Medical drugs can be dehydrating. Excessive exercise. And yeah, carbonated sodas. Caffeine especially is a really important one. For every cup of tea or coffee you drink, the body has to mobilize 2 to 3 cups of extra water just to remove those stimulant neurotoxins. So this really just compromises and inevitably creates dehydration because most people are not consuming an extra 2 to 3 cups for every cup of these other beverages. Another aspect. Okay, and also on the food and dehydration issues, extended fasting is also has been proven to cause buildup and stone formation in the liver, and this has a lot to do with the dehydrating aspects of the fasting and also not exercising that bile ejection. So hopefully you guys get that by this point. Another risk for and contribution for stone formation is obesity. Um, Obesity is associated with increased cholesterol secretion into the bile ducts, which develops stones. But like the even more important aspect to know and the risk is when people rapidly lose weight. This is one of the fastest ways to develop fatty liver, which is tens of thousands of stones, cholesterol stones build up in the liver. Um, so how does rapid weight loss cause stones? It quickly raises blood fats, and it appears to be a result of, yeah, increased cholesterol and decreased bile salts in the bile. It happens when people lose weight based on like uh undernourishment through certain kinds of diets. And also it will happen when people rapidly lose weight after a gastric bypass surgery. And yeah, one study found that more than 1/3, 38% of patients who had gastric bypass surgery developed gallstones and fatty liver afterwards. Another contribution to developing fatty liver and stones and congestion is dysbiosis in the gut, IBS, leaky gut. These intestinal disorders greatly deplete bile salts and therefore lead to formation of gallstones. Metabolic syndromes and diabetes also lead to stone formation. The next category would be pharmaceutical drugs and medications. One of the categories is medications that are prescribed for people to lower body fat, including clofibrate, Atromid S. Other cholesterol lowering drugs actually increase cholesterol concentrations in the bile, thereby leading to more gallstones. Basically, these drugs do lower blood fats, and this is an unnatural process, which causes the liver then to assume that the body's running short on fats and increase its production of cholesterol, which it then secretes into the bile ducts. A couple other new generation of statin drugs, octreotide, prevents the gallbladder from emptying itself, leaving bile behind to start to form stones. According to several studies published in medical journals such as The Lancet, there are also antibiotics that cause gallstones, and we are seeing a lot of problems with certain kinds of antibiotics, and I'm not a specialist on this. One of the problematic kind of antibiotics is ceftriaxone, used to treat respiratory tract infections. Also, and other antibiotics are problematic in this regard. Then there's water pills used to treat high blood pressure, such as thiazides, can bring on gallbladder disease. And apparently in children who take furosemide, they also are really highly inclined to develop gallstones. Basically, all of the pharmaceutical drugs are toxic by nature and require detoxification by the liver. So, an impaired liver function permits, unfortunately, a lot of these poisonous chemicals to enter the bile, which then disrupts the natural balance of the bile, leading to more gallstone creation. And a lot of the studies mostly just talk about gallstones in the gallbladder being created. So you can usually assume that if there's stones in the gallbladder being created, that sort of on the back end, there's like multitudes more being created in the liver. Overuse of antibiotics and overuse of NSAIDs also contributes. And then still in the drug category, hormone pills, oral contraceptives, is a really high risk for developing gallstones. Apparently, women develop more stones in the liver than men in general. And oral contraceptives and other estrogen treatments will double a woman's chance of developing gallstones. It basically increases bile cholesterol and therefore causes more congestion in the liver and gallbladder, and also other diseases that are caused by the lower functioning of these organs, the liver and the gallbladder. Hormone replacement therapy, HRT, will also cause these problems. On a different note, so moving into more lifestyle things, watching a lot of TV is one of the things it's quite stressful for the body, and there's like for the brain to process so many quick pictures basically causes like a physiological stress, and stress triggers cholesterol production in the body, because cholesterol is the basic ingredient for stress hormones. And so as the cholesterol gets used up in making stress hormones, the liver then raises its own production of cholesterol. And this is like a life-saving this is a life-saving process. And Andreas Moritz says if the body didn't bother to increase cholesterol levels during stress encounters, especially like, for example, while consuming a lot of screen time and television, he says that we would have had millions of television deaths by now. And this is kind of reminds me of a personal experience when I was a kid. My family, we were raised like without TV mostly. We did have some movies, you know, VHS, but completely outside of having access to regular TV programming and no like video games or anything like that. And I remember my brother, I don't know how old we were. He was probably like, he was pretty young, definitely under 10. Maybe he was like 6 or 8. We went to a friend's house, kind of like our cousins, and they had video games. My brother was allowed to play for like the first time in his life. It was like car racing games. And he sat there and he like refused to leave. He didn't have like, I don't know, he didn't have any sense of like when it was enough. And it was so like addictive and stimulating that he literally sat there playing the games until he made himself really sick. He actually became like feverish. He was like beet red. And he got really sick. We had to like pull him away from it. So that's just like an example of like that kind of overstimulation that causes this really intense like physiological stress in the body, but is also unfortunately fairly addictive. So it's challenging. And then we sort of think our tolerance is building up, but it's still a really constant intense stressor for our body. And the blood pressure rises to help move more oxygen, glucose, cholesterol, vitamins, and other nutrients around the body into the brain, especially. And then they are like rapidly used up. And so then there's also tension and stress hormones like adrenaline. And especially if you have actually sort of traumatic or violence or suspenseful um sort of like scary noises, violence, gunshots, cars, shouting, the adrenal glands are responding with all these stress hormones, preparing for fight or flight. So, and again, we do kind of get addicted to those like hits of stress hormones. Um, and this like it contracts blood vessels in the body and starts to like starve cells of nutrients and water. Television watching contributes greatly to dehydration as another reason for stone formation in the liver. Emotional stress is kind of along these similar lines, and if you're always under pressure, it alters the natural flora, like the bacteria population of the bile, causing more formation of stones in the liver. Um, One of the important aspects to help balance this out is decompression time, alone time, quiet time, time to unwind and basically reset the nervous system. On this similar thread, anger. Anger is an emotion of high stress. And like this pressure, if we're constantly under pressure, it causes frustration. Frustration eventually turns into anger, and anger is an indication of a lot of stress. And it causes adrenaline and other stress hormones to be secreted into the blood. Anger itself changes the flora of the bile as well, making it thicker, which causes stones. And liver stones and congestion in the liver add stress. Having gallstones in the liver is by itself a major cause of constant stress responses in the body, which I can personally really attest to, and especially like this sort of vicious cycle of the congestion in the liver causing anger and anger sort of feeding back into that loop, and it being challenging to get out of that. By eliminating stones from the liver, you will naturally become calmer, more relaxed. You may also discover that when the liver is cleaner, that you're less angry and upset about certain situations. Another lifestyle issue is not sleeping at night or disrupting the natural sleep and wake cycles. Um, the body's biological rhythms can become unsynchronized, and they are supposed to be regulated by darkness and daylight. And this can lead to a lot of disorders, including chronic liver issues. Um, the circadian rhythms are linked with the movements of the planet around the sun and also influenced by the motion of the moon and other planets in relation to the Earth. Um, in terms of the sleep at night too, you may have heard that the gallbladder time in the Chinese organ clock is from 11 to 1, and the liver hours are from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. at night. And during these times, the gallbladder and liver systems are taking care of numerous tasks that they can't do when they're busy digesting food during the day. So this is like really a time where it's where these organs are doing maintenance and upkeep for the body, for cleansing the blood, for neutralizing toxins, for cleaning up metabolic waste. And so if we are awake during this time, especially like processing with our eyes, television or screen times or thinking or trying to make decisions, or also if our bodies are busy trying to digest food, the ability for these organs to do what they need to do during that time, the other tasks, is greatly compromised. So it's really, really encouraged to be asleep by 10 so that we're in a deep restful state by 11 so that these organ systems can do the other life-saving tasks that we really need them to do. A couple other more miscellaneous contributions these days to buildup of congestion and stones in the liver are parasites, especially there's a wide variety of parasites that can take up home in the liver, but one of the most well-known and most commonly seen are liver flukes. And when parasites sort of make home nest colonies in the liver, this is a constant state. They're creating their own waste products, which the liver is trying to process, and they're creating almost like nets and these like nests that really block and sort of trap different components, including these cholesterol stones, in areas of the liver, decreasing the function and the bile flow. Um, and in my understanding and paradigm, the parasites and pathogens are really there because there's already toxicity built up in these areas and they are there to help decompose it. So another really big candidate is Candida and other yeasts, mold, mycotoxins, biotoxins, other sort of uh, biotoxic infections. Epstein-Barr virus, all of the herpes family, which involves, up to 12 strains, different kinds of strains that we know about so far. Lyme disease, all these types of pathogens can really set up shop in the liver and contribute, again, to sort of like vicious cycle. They may have been attracted to that area because there was buildup, something that needed to be broken down, but now their presence there is contributing to further toxicity, overwhelm, congestion in the area. More contributions to the congestion and overall toxicity that builds up in the liver are environmental toxins. This one seems pretty obvious. Fragrances, especially there are like petroleum-based fragrances, which are really highly used at this time. And a lot of them are oil-based, and so they basically have to be processed by the liver, and the liver just gets overwhelmed. Volatile organic compounds, all the toxicity, basically anything we breathe in, anything that we expose our skin to, it's all getting taken into the body, absorbed into the bloodstream, and then it needs to get processed, neutralized, packaged in the liver, and hopefully taken out in the bile and hopefully excreted all the way out through the feces. But all of that really adds a significant burden to the liver. And last but not least, kind of in sort of looking at how how do some people develop stones and compromised livers so early on in life, like really like in the first few hours. Well, we can also get into like the toxicity that was present in the mother um, as the baby was developing, and therefore kind of adding burden, compromising the baby's liver before they're even born. But then there's also this problem of cutting the umbilical cord too early while the liver is not fully functional of the newborn. And so without the help of the placenta and the mother's connection that is able to break down metabolic wastes, that baby's liver basically cannot metabolize all of the products that are even just the natural ones that are produced as the infant is switching over to breathing oxygen and switching the sort of nutrient receiving from the placenta to this sort of new system. Um, Not to mention, of course, medications or injections that are administered really close to birth or right after birth. So I know that was a lot, and even though this list is not the full or complete list by any means, it's not the end of the story. I wanted to share with you what I can because this question is going around a lot, and hopefully it has been illuminating to you and maybe help guide you into making some shifts that you can. If you want more in-depth info like this, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Songbird in Service. And if you're looking for help with clearing out the liver stones that have likely built up in your body, possibly during your entire life, please check out other videos on my channel or reach out to me directly. It's my passion to help empower as many people as possible to learn and implement this simple and life-saving technique of flushing the liver, which you can do from your very own home, inexpensive and pretty simple for the powerful impact it can have on every aspect of our life when we start to clear this material out of the organ and allow it to get back to its optimal functioning. So, hope this was helpful. Wishing you all a beautiful day, and may all beings be liberated. I'm Sienna Songbird, and thanks for hanging in there with me. And I'll see you in the next one.